Friday, 5:15 p.m., Jack Wellstone's office, Murdoch Holdings. Sylvia Browne stepped into the shower to freshen up after giving herself to her boss, Jack Wellstone. After pledging her love to a much younger man, she offered him the last intact part of her body, and that's what she's sitting on, and the boss graciously accepted. At first, she was nervous and a little scared. To begin with, she was afraid it might hurt, but to her amazement, it didn't. At least not as much as she originally thought. Secondly, it was a part of her body that she had never offered to Danny, her husband of almost 30 years. She had always thought that this type of sex was disgusting, and her husband had never broached the topic in all the years they had been married. So why now, she asked herself. Why did she allow herself to be abused like that if she would never have agreed to this idea with her husband? Perhaps, she reasoned to herself, this was just one way to separate the two most important relationships to her. It was something only Jack could have. But what about Danny? Was there any part of her that belonged exclusively to him anymore? Until the last few months, she belonged entirely to Danny, and no one else. The thought of cheating on her husband had never even crossed her mind, and she knew that he only had eyes for her. The company she worked for, Murdoch Holdings, was a large investment firm with interests throughout the country. Apparently, it was really no different from any other company, but it was very unique in one respect. Executives were not only allowed and encouraged, but required to engage in sexual relations with a personal assistant. The tradition was that the company hired only men for management positions. It was an unwritten rule that was followed by higher authorities, and it was a tradition that began more than 75 years ago. There was also an established unwritten rule that no employee was ever to mention the topic outside of the company. Ever. Those who did were quickly counseled and their employment was terminated. Most of the women who worked as assistants were unmarried, but a few were married, and most of them somehow managed to hide their work from their unsuspecting husbands. They all had to sign non-disclosure agreements. While many young women in the company aspired to become executive assistants, Sylvia never did. The reason was simple. She loved her husband and made a promise before God and everyone else to leave everyone else until death do them part. Raised in the church by strict parents, she took this promise seriously. Until Jack came along. About 8 months ago, the company hired Jack from a competitor based in New York. He was initially reluctant to accept the idea of having some kind of personal sex toy provided by the company, especially after what happened to him in New York when he had an affair with a married coworker. But after meeting Sylvia, who was temporarily assigned to him, he changed his mind. At first, she made it clear to him that she was happily married and intended to remain so. "Just so you know, Jack," she said, "I am assigned to you only until you choose the woman you want to be your permanent assistant. There are many very attractive young women for you to choose from, all of whom would jump at the chance to be yours. But I don't want any of them," he said. "I want you. You are the most beautiful woman I have ever met in my life, and it seems like you are a consummate professional. I choose you. But you will be expected to have sex with me, Jack," she said. "And, as I said, I'm very happily married to a wonderful man. Besides, I'm 49 years old enough to be your mother, and I have a daughter who just graduated from college. You definitely don't look your age, Sylvia," he said. "In fact, you look at least 10 years younger. I'll tell you what I'll do. I will choose you as my assistant, but I will not ask you for sex. We'll keep it platonic. In any case, you will receive a significant increase in salary, and I am sure that the bonuses will certainly come in handy." She knew he was right about that. Every 6 months, the company paid assistants $50,000 in bonuses for their services, in addition to a very nice regular salary. "Okay, Jack," she said. "We can try this for a while and see what happens." When Jack made his announcement, there were many dejected faces, and many noses were out of control. Everyone was wondering what Sylvia had that they didn't. She told her husband that she had received a promotion, and even told him that she had been chosen as an executive assistant. but she never told him what the job would entail. After nearly 30 years, Danny felt he could trust his wife, so he shared the good news with her. At first, Sylvia and Jack maintained a platonic relationship. They met together in his office 3 times a week, on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 16 to 17 in the evening, for so-called working hours. While other executives were having sex with their assistants, Jack and Sylvia sat on the couch in his office and talked, mostly about her family and her relationship with her husband. "Tell me about your husband," he said one day as they sat. "Denny, his name is short for Dennis, spent 20 years in the Marine Corps," she said. "He was a military policeman and specialized in criminal investigations. He served 2 tours in Iraq and 1 in Afghanistan. By the time he retired, he had developed connections with the local police and they hired him as a detective. About a year or so ago, he was injured quite badly while dealing with an armed robber. He spent months in a rehabilitation center and was finally discharged for health reasons and given a pension." "Oh my God," Jack said. "What is he doing now?" "He works part-time from time to time," she said. "He investigates and helps his friend, who has his own private detective firm. He says it's mostly boring, but he doesn't have to run around or chase criminals like he used to, although he spends most of his time at home." "Sounds like an interesting man," Jack said. "I'd like to meet him sometime." "Why don't you come over for dinner sometime?" she asked. "Denny loves barbecuing, and I'm sure he'd like to meet you too. In fact, our daughter, Alicia, is also in town. Maybe you can meet her too." "I'd love to," Jack said. After conferring with Denny, Sylvia invited Jack over for dinner, and Denny cooked the steaks on the grill while she prepared the mashed potatoes, gravy, and green beans. Alicia came in, and they had a good time. "That boss of yours seems like a pretty decent guy," Danny said after Jack left. "Not at all what I expected." "What did you expect?" she asked. "Oh, I don't know," he told her. "I thought that since he came from New York, he must be something of a jerk. But he really surprised me, and I can see that he had an influence on you." "About?" she asked. "Yes, you seem to like your job and you seem happier than I've ever seen you," he said. "There's nothing going on between you two, is there?" he asked jokingly. "Of course not," she said. "Do not be silly. You are the only man I love and want." "I hope so," he said. "I would be lost without you." "Well, you're stuck with me, mister," she said, hugging him. That night they had sex with her on top. After Danny was shot, he found that he couldn't have sex nearly as well or as often as before, but he did everything he could to keep his beloved wife happy. About a month after Jack chose Sylvia as his assistant, he came face-to-face with Aaron Harkness, the executive who hired him at the company. Aaron sidled up to Jack after the meeting and asked to speak with him alone. "Is something wrong, Aaron?" asked Jack. "Look, you know how things are with assistants, right?" Aaron asked. "Yes, I know," Jack said. "Tell me, are you really having sex with Sylvia?" Aaron asked. "Well, no," said Jack. "We became good friends. And I met her family. You know, she's married, and she says she doesn't want to do anything that would hurt her marriage. I just want to respect her wishes." "I understand that," Aaron said, "and I appreciate how you feel. But the assistant position was designed for a purpose. I don't want to give you an ultimatum, but you have a choice to make. Either get closer to Sylvia, choose a new assistant, or I'm afraid we'll have to replace you. So I'll either fuck her or someone else, or they'll kick me out?" Jack asked in shock. "I'm afraid so," Aaron said. Jack nodded his head and returned to his office. He called Sylvia inside and closed the door. "What happened, Jack?" she asked. "I was given a choice," he said. "I'll either have sex with you, choose another assistant, and have sex with her, or get my resignation papers." "Okay," she said. "I will leave so that someone else can take my place." "No," he said, placing his hand on her shoulder. "I don't need any of the others. I want only you. But there are a lot of single women here much younger than me who would be better suited for you," she said. "You are the most beautiful woman in this company, Sylvia," he said, I want to make love with you. She looked into his face, thinking about what he could offer. Yes, he was much younger than her, and he reminded her so much of Denny when he was younger, and she also developed feelings for him. But what about Danny? She was hesitant until he took her face in his hands and kissed her directly on the lips. She responded willingly and soon found herself taking off her clothes. When they were naked, she brought him to a mind-blowing climax. She wasn't worried about getting pregnant because she had her fallopian tubes tied after Alicia was born. When they finished, she was racked with guilt. She just cheated on her husband of almost 30 years. Until today, Danny was the only man she had sex with. Now she has broken her vows and become an adulteress. "That was wonderful, Sylvia," Jack said. "You are an amazing woman, and I could easily fall in love with you." She smiled at his compliment and kissed him on the lips. "I'd better go take a shower," she said. "I don't think Danny would like it if I came home without showering after sex." "I suppose not," he said. "What do you intend to do with your husband?" "You mean, do I plan to leave him?" she asked. "No, I intend to stay with him. Despite what we just did, the fact is that I love him with all my heart. I have feelings for you too, but if I ever have to choose between you and him, I will quit my job and stay with him." "I understand," he said. "We also need to set some ground rules," she said. "First of all, there will be no insult to my husband. If I ever hear you disrespect him, it's over between us. Secondly, he will never get me after sex with you because I will take a shower. Ever. Third, don't ask me to cut him off from sex. If you do this, the sex is over. Fourth, don't expect us to do this in my house or in the bed I share with my husband, and don't ever ask me to have sex with any of your friends or clients. We need to be very careful about what we do and where we do it," she added. "What happens here in the office stays in the office, and never give him a reason to suspect that something is happening between us. If we're at a public event and I'm with Denny, you'll treat me the same as any other coworker. Have questions?" "No, none," he said with a smile. "I think you've pretty much covered it all." She smiled, kissed him, and went to the bathroom, where she took a long shower. Thus began her career as Jack's paid corporate sex object. Over the next few months, the relationship between Sylvia and Jack developed in new ways. He showered her with gifts and treated her like a queen. Except for Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. when he treated her like a slut. She loved what he did to her and for her, and it didn't escape her notice that he kept his end of the bargain. He never abused Danny and never asked to have sex at her house. When she attended company events with Danny, Jack treated her the same as any other colleague. Danny never had the slightest idea what was going on between his wife and her boss. When she received her first bonus check, she spent almost all of it on a new Ford F-150 pickup truck for her husband. He was still driving his 2010 Ford and was amazed when it was delivered to his home. "What is happening?" he asked his wife. "A gift for my loving husband," she said. "Can we afford to pay for this thing?" he asked. "There's no need for that," she said. "I received a nice bonus check and wanted to surprise you. I thought you deserved this for being such a wonderful and supportive husband." "This is the nicest gift I've ever been given," he said, taking her into his arms. "You are the best wife a man can dream of. You know it?" "You are the best husband," she said, and tears appeared in her eyes. If he knew what she did to earn that money, she thought, he wouldn't be so kind. The relationship between Jack and Sylvia grew to the point where they began to think of each other as work spouses. It was not unusual for executives at this company to end up in long-term relationships with their exes, some even getting married. One day, Jack proposed to Sylvia in his office, getting down on one knee. "I love you so much, Sylvia," he said, holding an expensive pearl necklace in his hands. "Will you be my office wife?" She smiled and nodded her head. "Yes, my dear Jack, I will be your office wife," she said, kissing him. He placed the necklace around her neck and admired how it looked on her. "By the power invested in me, by me, I declare us the office husband and the office wife," Jack announced with some pathos. Sylvia smiled, looking into his eyes. "Now you can fuck your office bride," she told him. "This is the best offer I've received all day," he said. "Only one thing," she said, taking the wedding ring off her finger. "What are you doing?" asked Jack. "From now on, when I'm at work, I'm your wife, completely devoted to you," she said. "And when I come home, I'm Danny's wife, completely devoted to him." She placed her rings in the top drawer of her desk and closed it. "Now I'm ready, my office husband. Fuck me, you fool." After this, their relationship blossomed. Jack, who was already quite wealthy, bought Sylvia an entire wardrobe and insisted that she wear what he provided when she came to the office. She happily complied, changing when she arrived at the office and changing again before leaving. She also took the photo of her and Danny from her desk and hid it at the bottom of one of her desk drawers. She didn't want anything at work to remind her that she was already married to Danny. Sylvia and Jack also increased the frequency of their dates. By this time, they were having sex every day of the work week, most of the time in his office. He brought her to his apartment several times. They decided not to use the hotel for fear that someone might see them together. Sylvia also started working a little later than usual, a couple of days a week, telling Danny that she had to stay late to meet the deadline. In fact, she and Jack had sex with each other until they passed out in his office or apartment. On several occasions, she accompanied Jack east to seminars or meetings with clients. Of course, they shared a hotel room and spent their nights having sex like rabbits. She told Danny they had separate rooms and always made it a point to call home in the evenings, telling Jack to be quiet so Danny wouldn't suspect anything. As far as she knew, Danny had no idea what was really going on between her and Jack. She often smiled after her evening shower, admiring her body in the mirror. Yes, she thought, she had it all. A loving, devoted, ignorant husband at home, a great job, and an equally devoted lover who took her to the heights of sexual pleasure every day. The only question now was how long could this go on? How long did she want this to go on? Although she still looked good at 49, she knew that at some point Jack would want someone closer to his age, and she knew that at some point her body would begin to show her age. While she was taking a shower, another worry crept into her head. Over the past few days, Denny has changed a little. He was no longer the outgoing, happy-go-lucky guy she married almost 30 years ago. He became withdrawn and quiet, saying almost nothing to her. He started smoking again, something he only did when he was really upset about something. She also noticed that he stopped driving the new truck she bought and kept it locked in the garage. "Why are you driving your old truck?" she asked. "Is there something wrong with the new one?" "I don't want to put too many miles on a new car," he said. She tried to talk to him, hoping to find out what was bothering him. "Danny, is everything okay?" she asked one day. "You are terribly silent. I am worried about you." "Everything's just wonderful," he said in a neutral tone. "Mac asked me to help him with his wife's cheating case, and it really threw me off balance." Mac was Mike McGregor, a private detective who Denny worked for from time to time. They served in the Corps together, and he started his own company after leaving the police force. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Not really," he said, "but I just don't understand it. Why would a woman cheat on her husband and then tell him that she loves him? Damn it, if she wanted to make fun of her, then why did she even marry this guy? I'm telling you, someone would have to die in his place." She flinched at his words and wondered if he really meant what he said. "Well, you'll never have to worry about that, honey," she said. "You know I would never do anything like that to you." He stared at her for a few moments before answering. "Yes, I guess I'm lucky, aren't I?" he said, flashing a smile that did not contain a drop of warmth. She smiled back, but privately began to wonder if he knew about her and Jack. Back to the present, Sylvia finished her shower and got out to dry herself off. She made sure to be completely dry, and her hair was brushed exactly as it was when she left for work that morning. She made every effort to hide her trysts from Denny, even using the same soap and shampoo she used at home. She put on the clothes she wore to work and entered the office. She gave Jack a searing kiss before leaving his office. "See you tomorrow," she said. "See you," he told her. "I love you." "I love you too," she said. She walked into her office, unlocked it, and pulled out her desk drawer to take out her rings. She almost went into shock when she looked in her desk drawer and saw that her rings were gone. She always put them in the partitioned space at the front of the drawer before closing and locking it. There was no way anyone could take them away. But now this place was empty. Distraught, she rummaged through the entire box, but there were no rings there. She looked around, wondering if they had fallen to the floor, but there was nothing there. She ran back into Jack's office. "What's wrong?" he asked. "My rings are gone," she exclaimed. "Someone took my rings." Jack went into her office, and the two of them looked for her rings, but could not find them anywhere. "They couldn't just get up and leave on their own," he said. "Are you absolutely sure you locked them in your desk drawer?" "Absolutely," she said. "They must be here somewhere," he said. "Listen, I'll leave a note for the night cleaning crew to keep an eye on them. Don't worry, we will find them." "But what do I tell Danny?" she cried. "He will immediately notice that they are not there." "Tell him you took them off to clean and resize them," he said. "I hate lying to him," she said before catching herself. This is what she has been doing for several months now. But I guess I have no choice, do I? She left the office while Jack was writing a note for the night team. Friday, 5:15 p.m., home of Denny and Sylvia Brown. Denny Brown sat in his chair on the back porch, twirling the ring in his hand. In his other hand, he held a lit cigarette, his third in less than an hour. He thought about putting the ring in his pocket with the other two that were already there, but decided against it. As he put the ring back on his finger, he thought of Sylvia. He was near the end of his first 4 years in the army when he first met her. A friend invited him to dinner, saying he should meet someone. He was smitten the moment he saw her. She was the sweetest and most beautiful woman he had ever met. He asked her out and still remembers the first time she kissed him. He remembered how she lightly ran her tongue across his lips and how she gently sucked on his bottom lip. He had never experienced anything like this before and felt as if he had died and gone to heaven. They continued dating and fell in love with each other. When he asked her to marry him, she hugged him and said yes. She said she was a virgin and insisted on remaining that way until her wedding night. He liked her so much that he agreed. By then, he had already met her family and they all got along great. Her father was a decent, hard-working man who did not smoke or drink. When he wasn't working, he spent time with his family. In addition to her parents, he had to undergo testing with her 2 older brothers, which he did. They made it clear to him that they expected him to treat their little sister with love and respect. In their home, family was everything. One day, her father spoke to him privately and expressed his concerns. "I know you say you love Sylvia," he said, "but I know what young Marines are like, especially when they're on duty. I won't stand by and watch her get hurt. I promise you that I will never cheat on your little girl," he told Sylvia's father. Eventually, the older man relented and accepted him as his son-in-law. "Promise me that you will take care of my little girl no matter what," he said. "I promise," Danny said. For the next 29.5 years, Sylvia was the best wife a man could ask for. Loyal, supportive, loving, caring, and, perhaps most importantly, flexible. She had to put up with Danny's constant business trips abroad, and later, with his long working hours. It wasn't easy, but they got through it all. They had other problems, too. Sylvia gave birth to their first child, Leah, about 1.5 years after they married. Unfortunately, the girl died from sudden infant death syndrome, leaving them both devastated. Sylvia became pregnant twice more, but miscarried both times. She talked to Denny about getting a tubal ligation, but he wanted to try again. She agreed with his decision, and the result was Alicia. After discussing the matter with her husband, Sylvia had her fallopian tubes tied. At first, Danny wanted to try for a son, but he didn't want Sylvia to suffer, so he agreed. After serving in the Corps for 20 years, Danny decided to retire. They returned to his hometown, where he became a detective for the local police department. Sylvia got a job as an administrative assistant at Murdoch Industries, and slowly moved up the ranks. They continued to live their lives, which consisted mainly of working and raising their daughter, Alicia. Everything was going well in the Brown household, and Denny looked forward to the day when they could retire and enjoy their golden years, perhaps with grandchildren. Then, about a year and a half ago, he responded to a call about a burglary at a bank on the outskirts of town. 3 criminals took several hostages and demanded that the police provide an evacuation vehicle and a clear route out of the city. The incident ended in a short shootout during which he was seriously wounded. One of the 3 bullets that hit him severely damaged his left leg, and he ended up undergoing physical therapy for about 6 months. Danny hoped he would soon be able to return to duty, but the department decided to place him on medical retirement instead. Even though he received a monthly police pension as well as a military pension, their budget suffered a bit. Sure, they could pay their bills, but they didn't have as much wiggle room as before. After he was able to get on his feet and settle in a bit, he took a part-time job as an investigator. It didn't pay much, but it forced him to leave the house from time to time. His friend, Mike McGregor, also offered him a part-time job as a private investigator. He applied for and received a license to work as an armed private investigator. Mike, or Mac, as he preferred to be called, didn't want Danny to push him too hard, so he limited his work to observations or research that could be done online. Danny was so proud that day when Sylvia came home and told him that she'd been promoted and would be the assistant to the new executive the company had just hired from New York. He felt she deserved a promotion, and a pay raise would certainly help. He couldn't help but notice that her attitude and overall outlook on life seemed to improve. She was happier and much more relaxed than before. Perhaps, he thought, it was the extra money from her new promotion. He was amazed the day she brought the new pickup truck to her house. Sylvia told him it was a gift for being so supportive of her. He wondered how they could afford it, and was surprised when she said she paid for it with a bonus check she received. It wasn't long after his whole world came crashing down on him. The previous Monday afternoon, he had received a call from Terry Knight, one of the girls who worked with Sylvia. He was in Mac's office, having just returned from a surveillance mission. "Brown," he said, answering the call. "Mr. Brown, this is Terry Knight," the woman said. "I work with your wife. Is it possible to meet somewhere for a few minutes?" "I guess," Danny said. "There's a little coffee shop on the corner of Riverside and 3rd Street. Would this be normal?" "That would be ideal," she said. "Can we meet in, say, 20 or 30 minutes? Denny looked at his watch and saw that it was 3:35 p.m. "Of course, I can meet you there," he said. "Can you tell me what this all means?" "Not right now and not over the phone," she said. "I'll tell you when I see you." "Okay," he said. "See you in about 20 minutes." They finished the conversation, and Danny entered Mac's office. "We just got a strange call," he said. "What's happened?" asked Mac. "Some woman who works with my wife wants to meet me," Danny said. "Really?" asked Mac. "You're not dating on the side, are you?" "Of course not, Mac. You know me better," Danny said. "I know. I'm just tugging on your chain," Mac said. "Any idea what she wants?" "No, none," Danny said. "Well, go on," said Mac. "Maybe it will bring us more benefits in business." He headed toward the exit and met Terry in the cafe. He recognized the young woman as he had met her before at the company Christmas party. After buying them both a latte, he sat down next to her. "What can I do for you, Terry?" he asked. "Unfortunately, I have to tell you about this, Mr. Brown," she said. "Your wife is in a relationship with one of our leaders." "Please call me Danny," he said. "What do you mean by in a relationship? Is she having an affair?" "I'm afraid it's a little more than a romance," she said. "Are you saying that she fell in love with this leader?" he asked. "I think so," she said. "In my opinion, this is exactly what it looks like." "Who is this leader?" he asked. "Is this Jack Wellstone?" "Yes, that's true," she said. "How do you know?" "Sylvia told me she was hired as his executive assistant," he said. "I met this man. He seems like a good guy. Are you sure Sylvia is related to him? He's a little young for her, isn't he? She was his choice, Terry said. And she's not an executive assistant. She's actually a personal assistant. And she is expected to have sex with him. How long has this been going on? He asked. It's been a little over 6 months, she said. Why are you telling me all this? And why now, 6 months later? He asked. Well, I hate to say it, but part of what drives me is my own selfish desire, she said. You see, I hoped that he would choose me, but instead he chose a married woman who is much older than him. No offense. Not accepted, he said. I completely understand. Maybe I should talk to your management. Oh, no, don't do that, she said. Please. Why not? He asked. We all have to sign non-disclosure agreements, she said. And we should never talk about agreements between leaders and their officials. We could get fired if we do this. I understand, he said. So, this agreement also works with female managers? No, the company does not hire female managers, she said. I know this sounds a little sexist, but to my knowledge, the company has never hired a woman in a management position. Quite a few applied, but none were ever hired. Interesting, he said. Tell me, are any of the other assistants married? A couple of them, yes, but most are single, she said. What about their husbands? He asked. One doesn't know about this agreement, but the other knows, she said. He is disabled and cannot have sex. They could really use some extra money, so he doesn't complain until she rubs his nose in it. How much extra do they receive? He asked. Well, the salary is almost doubled, and they all get a $50,000 bonus every 6 months, she said. This is after taxes. Wow, he said. So that's where she got the money for his new truck. No doubt this is an attempt to assuage her guilt. Suddenly, the new truck didn't seem so nice anymore. How often do they get together? He asked. The company has regular office hours for assistants to, talk to their managers, she said. This happens every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 16:04 to 17:00 p.m. Most, like your wife and Jack, find another time to get together. So Sylvia is with him now. Is this what you want to tell me? He asked. She nodded her head. Yes, she said. Can I ask you to do me a favor, please? He asked. I'll try, she said. Could you look after Sylvia and Jack's relationship for me for a while? He asked. Let me know if you see or hear anything you think I should know about. I think I can do it, she said. But I have to be very careful. I understand, Terry, he said. I don't want you to put your job at risk. I think I'll go, Denny, she said, standing up. Once again, I'm really sorry this happened. If I see or hear anything, I'll let you know. Thank you, Terry. I appreciate it more than you know, and I appreciate you telling me, he said. After she left, he sat for a while, thinking about what she had told him. He felt as if someone had just punched him in the stomach. So, he thought, this is how Sylvia repays me for 30 years of marital fidelity. He looked at his watch and realized it was about 4:30, which meant Sylvia and Jack were about halfway through their rest hour. He returned to the office, hoping to see Mac before he left. Hey, Denny, Mac said as he entered the office. I didn't expect you to come back. Are you okay? You look like someone just took all your cookies. No, Mac, I'm not okay, he said. I just found out that Sylvia is cheating on me with her boss. Let's go to my office, Mac said, taking off his jacket. We need to talk. Denny recounted everything Terry told him. When he finished, Mac thought for a moment before speaking. The first thing you need to do is get evidence of it, he said. Right now, all you have is the words of a coworker who admits that she has a thing for your wife's boss. Personally, I find it hard to believe that Sylvia could cheat on you. Damn, you guys have been married for what, almost 30 years? Yes, Danny said. Almost. Turning 30 in just a few weeks. Mac pulled out a desk drawer and pulled out an audio recorder disguised as a pen. He handed it to Danny. Put this in her purse, he said. It will record up to 18 hours of audio at a distance of up to 15 meters. I'll see what I can do with video surveillance. I know it will be difficult, but don't let on that you suspect something is wrong and don't do anything stupid. Yes, you know me, Danny said. Yes, and that's why I'm telling you not to do anything stupid, Mac said. Tell me, Danny, what floor is her office on? On the 15th floor of the Parker Building downtown, Danny said. Murdoch occupies the top 7 floors of the building. And this building is opposite the block building, if I'm not mistaken, said Mac. Let me see what I can do. For now, put this in Sylvia's purse and keep an eye on it over the next few days. See what you can catch, and play it cool. Maybe nothing is happening. Okay, Danny said, before heading home. Putting the pen in Sylvia's purse was easy. Playing as if nothing happened was a little more difficult. He watched her every move, but saw nothing unusual. He tried to smell cologne or anything else that might indicate she was having sex, but again, there was nothing. He watched to see if she would immediately go to the shower, but that didn't happen either. She simply took off her work clothes, as she always did, and went downstairs to prepare dinner, as she had done every day since she started working at Murdoch. When they went to bed, Sylvia said she was very tired, which meant no sex. This didn't surprise Danny, as she had often been extremely tired lately. He wondered if Terry had made a mistake, but the whole story still haunted him. He figured he would find out the truth soon enough, one way or another. He received his answer the next evening when he took a pen from her purse. After loading the audio onto his computer, he heard Sylvia and Jack exchange much more than just warm greetings. He clearly heard her begging him to fuck her harder, and then heard her scream as she climaxed. "I'd better go get myself cleaned up," she said to Jack when they finished. "I don't want Danny to suspect anything." After her shower, he heard the words that put an end to it all. "I love you," Jack said. "I love you too," she said. "See you in the morning." Danny sat in his office with tears streaming down his face when he heard this. What a bitch, he thought to himself. This lying, treacherous, good-for-nothing bitch. How long has this shit been going on? He thought. It didn't really matter to him. His marriage was over. There was no way he was going to become her willing cuckold. He copied the audio file from the recorder, charged it back up, and put it back in her purse. Tomorrow, he decided, he would begin the process to end this sham marriage. That night he went to bed and turned his back to Sylvia when she reached out to him. He had never done this before. He was always more than willing to reciprocate her feelings. But that was over. He heard her turn away, and for a moment he thought he heard her sobbing. Cool shit, he thought to himself. The next morning he called and made an appointment with a lawyer about the divorce. He knew a few, as Mac had actually worked for quite a few divorce lawyers. "I take it you have an audio recording?" asked Mac. Danny nodded his head. "Damn," Mac said. "I'm sorry to hear it. I managed to find a place in the block building from where I would have a clear view of her office. Now I have a camera there. Let's see what we can do." When Danny met with the lawyer, he laid out everything he knew and allowed the lawyer to listen to the evidence he had. The lawyer then told him the bad news. "I'm sorry to hear about that, Denny," said John Miller, the lawyer. "But the fact of the matter is, it doesn't matter. You see, it's a no-fault state, which means you can't file on any grounds other than irreconcilable differences. A judge may take adultery into account when it comes time to divide assets or award alimony, but that's about it." "Can I contact her boss or her company?" Danny asked. "You can't sue her boss for alienation of affection, if that's what you're thinking," John said. "The state legislature took care of this a while ago. However, perhaps we can do something with the company. Let me work on this for a bit and I'll get back to you." "Okay, do what you can," Danny said. "I want to completely break up with her. She can take this house for herself. I just want my half of the assets and my pension. She can take the rest." "I'll do the paperwork," John said. "I'd like to notify her myself," Danny said. "Okay, when would you like to do this?" asked John. "Next Wednesday," Danny said. "It was supposed to be our 30th anniversary." "A little revenge, huh?" asked John. "I don't see a problem with this." Having paid the advance, Danny returned to the office where he noticed Mac. "Check this out," Mac said. Danny walked over to see what Mac was looking at. There, on the screen, was Sylvia, taking off her rings and throwing them into the top drawer of her desk before changing her clothes. What does she do with her rings? And why is she changing clothes? Danny asked. Knowing that she was having sex with Jack was bad enough, but seeing her throw away her rings like a pile of garbage tore him up inside. Good question, Mac said. I get the impression that she's going out of her way for this asshole. They watched as Sylvia hung up the clothes she'd worn to the office, then grabbed another dress, one that clearly cost more than the one she'd just taken off, and put it on. Then they saw her put on the necklace. Danny looked, but couldn't remember if he'd ever seen the necklace before. I have an idea, Danny said. I have something to do, but I'll be back. Don't do anything stupid, Max said. You know me, Danny said. Yes, I know, and I'm not going to get you out of jail, Max said with a laugh. Don't worry, Danny said. He left the office and headed to the apartment complex. He had previously contacted them about renting a small one-bedroom apartment. After analyzing his budget, he decided that he could afford a small apartment and paid a deposit for the apartment on the first floor. They said he could start moving in on Monday after the house was cleaned. After that, he went to the bank and withdrew half of the funds from his checking and savings account, then opened a new account at another bank. From there, he went up to the 15th floor of the Parker building. He had been there many times before to see Sylvia, so it wouldn't be strange if someone saw him there. He managed to get to Sylvia's office undetected, which was part of his plan. When he got there, he pulled a set of lockpicks from his pocket and easily opened the top drawer of her desk. Sure enough, her rings were there, in one of the partitioned compartments of the drawer. He put the rings in his pocket and closed the drawer, latching it. He looked through her other drawers and saw a photograph that she usually kept face down on her desk under some folders. It was a photo of the two of them on vacation, taken a few years earlier. Holding back his tears, he closed the desk drawer and left the office. From there he went home, took a beer out of the refrigerator and sat on the back porch with a fresh pack of cigarettes. He was finishing his fourth cigarette when he heard Sylvia open the door and go outside. "Danny, are you okay?" she asked. "How many cigarettes did you smoke?" "Obviously, this is not enough," he said. "I am still alive." "Denny Brown, don't even dare joke like that," she said, sitting down in one of the sun loungers. "It's not funny." He looked at her fingers for a moment and wondered what she would say about her rings. "Where are your rings?" he asked. She looked guilty for a moment, but quickly came to her senses. I took them to the jeweler to have them cleaned," she said. Danny noticed that she was looking down and to the side when she spoke. She always did this when she lied. He nodded his head. "I understand," he said. "I didn't know they were dirty." He took a drag from his cigarette before speaking again. "I hope you don't mind, but I've taken the liberty of booking a table at Mangiacotti for next Wednesday." Mangiacotti was a rather expensive Italian restaurant that they sometimes visited on special occasions, such as anniversaries or birthdays. "Next Wednesday?" she asked. "What happens next?" "Wednesday." "Our 30th anniversary," he said calmly, not surprised that she forgot about it. "We always go out to eat on our anniversary. Is that a problem? Do you have any other plans for this day?" Except fucking Jack, fucking Wellstone, he thought to himself. No, I think it's okay," she stammered. "Do you think maybe we can change things up a little this year? Maybe we can celebrate on the weekend? This way we will have more time to spend together." "Yes, but it won't be our anniversary," he said. "But if you have more important things to do and don't want to celebrate, I can call and cancel." No, don't do that," she said. "I would love to go somewhere." "Are you sure?" Danny asked. "I certainly don't want to upset you or make you feel like you're being forced into this." "Of course I want to go somewhere with you for our anniversary," she said. "Danny, what's gotten into you lately? Is this the cheating wife case you're working on with Mac? You haven't been like yourself at all lately. I'm really starting to worry." Sorry, I just had a lot on my mind, that's all, Danny said, putting out his cigarette. Well, you're starting to scare me, she said, standing up. I've never seen you like this. You've been out of sorts all week. If you don't mind, I'm going to get changed and prepare dinner. You know that I love you, don't you? Yes, of course, he said. She waited a few moments for him to say he loved her, but when he didn't, she kissed him on the cheek and headed upstairs. He knows, she thought to herself. This is the only way to explain his behavior. Oh God, what have I done? She asked herself. And will I ever be able to fix this? She changed clothes and went downstairs to prepare dinner for them. They ate mostly in silence. When they finished eating, Danny excused himself and went to his home office. He closed and locked the door and then turned on his computer to find out everything he could about Jack fucking Wellstone. Sylvia knocked on the door once. Are you okay, Danny? She asked. Wonderful, he said. Just finishing up some work. Okay, well, I'm going to bed. Don't stay too long, she said. I won't, he said. Good night. Good night, she answered. I love you. Okay, he said. Stunned by his answer, Sylvia backed away from the door and up the stairs. By the time her husband went to bed, she was already asleep. The next day, Danny listened to the last audio recording from the device installed in Sylvia's purse. Tears streamed down his face as he listened to his wife allow Jack to fuck her where she was sitting. He never liked it. And as far as he knew, neither did she. But here she was, willingly allowing her boss to take her last virginity. He wanted to strangle her when he heard her tell him that her ass belonged exclusively to him. He needed to get out of the house before he said or did something stupid. He turned off the computer, grabbed the keys, and left without saying a word to Sylvia. He heard her calling to him as he left, but did not answer. He just slammed the door and walked to his old truck. As he drove out, he saw her standing in the front window and hoped she didn't notice the tears rolling down his face. He drove to the park and sat in the parking lot for a while, letting his tears flow. He wasn't sure how much more of this he could take without exploding. 30 years of wedded bliss. And this is how it ends, he thought. Someone has to pay for this. He needed someone to talk to, so he called Alicia. After all, what was about to happen on Wednesday would affect her too, and she had a right to know. She picked up the phone after the first ring. Dad, she said. It's a surprise. Everything is fine? No, honey, it's not like that, he said. Can you spare a few minutes for your old man? Of course, Dad, she said. Do you want to come to me? I can make you coffee. Sounds tempting, he said. I'll be right there. Just do me a favor, please. What exactly? She asked. If your mom calls, don't tell her you talked to me, okay? Okay, Dad, she said. Is everything okay between you two? No, that's not true, he said. Okay, she said. Come to me. See you in a few minutes. He reached her apartment complex and climbed the stairs to her second-floor apartment. She saw him coming up the stairs and opened the door before he could knock. He hugged her and kissed her cheek when she invited him inside. The coffee is ready, she said. Sit down and I'll bring you a cup. Thank you, he said, sitting down on the sofa. She handed him a cup of coffee, black and hot, just the way he liked it. Then she sat down opposite him. What's going on, Dad? She asked. He took a sip of his coffee and set his cup down before answering. Your mother is cheating on me, he said quietly. What? She asked in shock. Are you sure about this? He nodded his head. Yes, he said. I'm sure. I have audio, video, photos. It's a full-blown affair with her boss. Sorry, her work husband. This has been going on for several months now. Oh my God, Alicia said. What are you going to do? I have no choice, he said. I'll divorce her. You can't cope with this? She asked. I mean, you guys have been married for what seems like forever. No, honey, there's no way I can get past this, he said. Maybe if it was just a one-time drunken negligence, but not that. I mean, she doesn't even wear my rings at work anymore. He even bought her clothes to wear to the office. She changes her clothes when she gets there, has sex at the end of the day, takes a shower, puts her old clothes back on, then comes home and acts like nothing happened. Can't her company do something about this? She asked. It almost sounds like sexual harassment. In fact, her company not only encourages it, they demand it from their managers, he told her. It's just wrong, she said. No, it's not like that, he told her. But they pay her to have sex with him. That's how she was able to afford this new pickup truck. So she's a corporate prostitute? Alicia asked in shock. In a way, yes, he said. I hope you plan to do something about it, she said. My lawyer is working on something, he said. Unfortunately, you can no longer sue for alienation of affection in this state. This sucks, she told him. Yes, that's true, he replied. Do you want to know what's even worse? He was at our house. He ate at my table, pretending to be my friend. All this time you know. It's okay, Dad, she said. I'm already a big girl. I've heard all these bad words before. It made him laugh, something he hadn't done for a long time. The hardest part of all this is that she says she loves me, he said. And you know, part of me believes she does, at least up to a point. Do you still love her? She asked. Oddly enough, yes, he said. That's why it hurts so damn much. But that's not enough to keep her, is it? She asked. He shook his head. No, it's not like that, Danny told her. I can't trust her anymore. I caught her in too many lies. Even if this Jack Wellstone leaves, what's to stop her from sleeping with another guy? You know, he's not much older than you. How old is he? Asked Alicia. 30, according to his biography on the company website, he said. And it turns out your mother is not the first older woman he seduced. I've heard about guys like this, she said. Maybe he's one of those guys who was partial to his mother when he was younger. You mean something like the Oedipus complex? Danny asked. Well, there's more to it. But in a nutshell, yes, she said. What do you plan to do with it? Unfortunately, I can't sue him, but I have no intention of letting him get away unscathed, Danny said. Just don't do anything stupid, she said. Damn, Danny said. Does everyone think I'm an idiot or something? Do you know how many times I've heard this? I'm sure you've heard this more than once, Alicia said, smiling. Jokes aside, Dad, I just don't want you to end up in prison. I still love you and always will. I just can't believe Mom was stupid enough to fall in love with some younger guy. Yeah, well, she did it, he said, and after Wednesday she'll probably need all the support she can get. I'll do my best, Dad, but that doesn't mean I won't be angry with her, she said. Believe me, I'm going to tell her everything I think. They talked a little more, and after a while, Danny felt better. He looked at his watch and realized that he had been gone for more than 2 hours. I think I better get back before your mother calls the National Guard, he said. Are you going to be okay, Dad? Alicia asked. I can handle it, he said. I really appreciate you letting me speak. Thank you. I enjoy it, she said. I'm just glad I could help. Thank you for being honest with me about this. It really means a lot that you can trust me. Well, now that I've been able to say it, I actually feel a lot better, he said. If there's anything I can do for you, Dad, let me know, she said. Thank you, honey. I appreciate it, he said. With another hug, Danny left and drove home. He wasn't sure what to expect when he got there. He half expected to see Wellstone's car in his driveway, but luckily that didn't happen. He entered the house and looked around. 30 years of memories, the last 10 or more right here between these walls, were everywhere. He almost burst into tears when he looked around. He saw Sylvia in the backyard, tending to her flowers as if nothing had happened. How could she do this, he wondered. How could she bully him, and then come home and pretend everything was just fine? Shaking his head, he took a beer from the refrigerator and walked out into the backyard. Once seated, he opened his beer and lit a cigarette. Sylvia looked up when she heard the back door open and saw her husband lighting a cigarette. She got up and went out onto the veranda. Everything is fine? She asked. Just wonderful, he said. "Where have you been?" she asked. "You flew out of here like a bat out of hell." "Something caught my attention," he said. "While I was not at home, I went to see Alicia." "How is she?" asked Sylvia. "She's doing well," he told her. Sylvia sat up and looked at her husband worriedly. "Denny, we really need to talk," she said. "Oh? About what?" he asked. "About you, about us, about everything," she said. "All week you have been inattentive, irritable, and out of sorts. You never told me that you loved me. You haven't even touched your new truck. Did I do something to upset you?" He looked at her strangely when she asked about it. "What? Jack fucked her somehow wrong? Or something like that?" he asked himself. "Tell me that," he said. "Did you do something to upset me?" "As far as I know, no," she said, looking down and to the side. He wanted to jump up and wring her neck. "But if I did it, I'm very sorry. I did not want this. Please, Denny, talk to me. I hate seeing you like this. I feel like I'm losing you." "It's because you're losing me, you stupid bitch," he thought to himself. After a few moments, she continued. "I know you're working on this case with Mac, and it's upsetting you," she said. "Maybe you shouldn't work with Mac if it's going to bother you that much. I've never seen you so worried about something before." "The case is almost solved," he said. "Soon all this will end." "I hope so," she said, "because I hate to see you like this. This is killing me. Look, why don't you let me help you take your mind off it all tonight? It's been a long time since we did anything. What do you think?" Danny thought about it before answering. Her words made sense. It had been a long time since they last had sex, and after Wednesday there was no telling when he would have sex again. Maybe, he thought, he could remind her of what she was about to lose. He smiled at her before answering. "Sure, that sounds like a great idea," he said. She smiled and kissed her husband. "I'll make sure you never forget this night," she said. And it was a night neither of them would soon forget. Denny pressed his soon-to-be ex-wife into the mattress several times with a force he hadn't shown in bed for a long time. Sylvia was shocked by the number of climaxes. Even Jack couldn't handle what Danny did to her, she thought to herself. Then her husband surprised her. "What are you going to do, Denny?" she asked. "This is a surprise," he said. When she realized what he intended to do, she tried to run away from him, but he stopped her. "No, Denny, please," she begged. "We've never done this before." "Then I say that in 30 years it's time," he said. "I'll move slowly, I promise." He slowly took the place where she was sitting. "We should have done this a long time ago," he thought to himself. Sylvia, meanwhile, was depressed. It was supposed to be Jack's exclusive property. What made Danny decide to do this out of the blue? She knew she couldn't tell her husband to get out of what was supposed to be Jack's territory, so she relaxed and gave in to what Denny was doing. After their final climax, Denny came out and went to the bathroom to get a pair of warm washcloths, one for himself and one for Sylvia. He handed one to her while he cleaned himself up. For a moment, he thought she was about to cry. "Why did you do that?" she asked. "You've never shown any interest in this before." "Your ass looked so delicious that I couldn't help it," he said. "I didn't hurt you, did I? I'm sorry if I did." "No, you didn't hurt me, but you just surprised me, that's all," she said. "You were an animal. What came over you?" "You did it," he told her. "You looked so seductive that I just couldn't help myself." She smiled and hugged him. "I love you, Denny Brown," she said. "I hope you never forget this." "And I love you too," he said. Satisfied, they fell asleep in each other's arms. Danny wondered if this would be the wake-up call she needed. On Sunday, they slept late, and Denny went downstairs for a breakfast of bacon and eggs. "Good morning, sleepy heed," said Sylvia. "I hope you slept well last night. I know for sure that I did it. I still get goosebumps from what you did last night." He smiled, hoping to hide the pain he was experiencing. "I'm glad," he said. "I think the old man still has some abilities left." "Yes, I slept better than I have in a long time." After they ate, he went out into the backyard and turned on his lawnmower, perhaps for the last time. He mowed the yard and put the lawnmower down, admiring his work for perhaps the very last time. I will miss this yard, he thought to himself. That night they made love again, but Denny stayed away from Sylvia's ass as it was still a little sore. From Danny's point of view, it was great. It was enough for him to simply know that this was no longer the exclusive territory of Jack Wellstone. When they finished, Sylvia rested her head on Denny's shoulder. "Please don't forget that I really love you," she said. "I would be completely lost without you." "I love you too," he said. What was true was that he still loved her, which is why her betrayal hurt him so much. That night, before going to bed, he made a decision and put the audio device in her purse, hoping that she would tell Jack that their relationship was over. Monday, D-Day 2. When Sylvia left for work that morning, she felt like a new woman. After preparing a delicious breakfast for herself and Danny, she kissed her husband and practically ran out of the house with a big smile on her face. As Danny watched her leave the house, he hoped she would do the right thing. Arriving at work, she flitted into Jack's office, picked out a nice dress for the day, and changed into the necklace her boss had given her when they became office spouses. She hugged Jack tightly and kissed him. "You're in a good mood this morning," Jack said. "I take it you had a good weekend." "The best," she said. "Danny and I reconnected this weekend, and it was wonderful." "I understand," he said. "Did he leave anything for me?" She laughed. "Oh, there's a lot here for you, my office husband," she said. "As I understand, everything is going well at home?" he asked. "Yes, now it is," she said. "But I think we really need to be extra careful." "Oh? Why?" asked Jack. "I think he's starting to suspect something," she said. "Last week he was in a foul mood all week. He said he was dealing with his wife's cheating case and it really got to him. Last week he didn't drive his new truck at all. You don't think he would resort to violence, do you? I mean, he actually served in the Marines and was a police officer for over 10 years, Jack said. "Of course not," she said. "Denny is a cat. Don't let that rough exterior fool you. By the way, I'll have to stop having sex with you on Wednesday." "How did this happen?" asked Jack. "This is our time, you know." "I know, but it will be my 30th wedding anniversary," she said. "Remember what I said when we first started this? If I had to choose, I would choose him, always. And I'm not going to ruin our anniversary. I suggested we move it to the weekend, but he didn't want to hear about it. Besides, he already has a table booked at Mangiacotti." "At least he has good taste," Jack said. "Of course," she said. "He married me, didn't he?" Jack laughed and picked her up before pressing a kiss to her lips. "Yes, he did," Jack said. "Well, since it will be your 30th anniversary, I think we can agree. Maybe you and I can take a weekend and go somewhere." "We agreed," she said. "But not too soon. First, I want to make sure Danny gets over his scare. Something is really eating at him, and I hate to see him like this." "Do you think he knows about us?" he asked. "I don't know," she told him. "Maybe. That's why I think we still need to slow down a little." "By the way, what did you tell him about your rings?" asked Jack. "I told him what you suggested," she said. "That I took them to clean them." "And he bought it?" asked Jack. "Yes," said Sylvia. "Has anyone found them?" "No," he said, shaking his head. "No one turned them in, and apparently no one was seen entering the office on Friday afternoon." "Any idea what could have happened to them?" she asked. He shook his head. "I have no idea," he said. "Trust me, I'm just as confused as you are. I will continue to search and ask around. They must be here somewhere." "Okay," she said. "If there is nothing else, maybe I can buy a set similar to the original." "If you need it, I'll take you downstairs and buy you a replacement set," Jack said. "In the end, it happened in my office. I feel somewhat responsible." "You're a sweet man, Jack," she said. "No, it's at my expense. It was I who took them off and put them in my desk drawer. Everything is fine. I can transfer them to my credit card. Either way, I better get to work." "Speaking of work," Jack said, "I wanted to discuss something with you." "What is this?" she asked. "Well, since we're office spouses and all, And you've already said that you're 100% devoted to me in the office. I was wondering how you would feel about taking my last name, he asked. Only in the office, of course. Other executives have been talking about this for a couple of weeks now, and it looks like they might want to make it policy. Sylvia thought for a moment and smiled. Sylvia Wellstone, she said thoughtfully. I like the sound of it. Okay, but let's wait a little. Maybe for a week or so. Like I said, Danny has been acting like a bear lately, and I want to make sure he's okay before we go any further. Okay, just say the word, and I'll ask HR to change the directory, Jack said. I'll do it, she said, before rushing out of his office. Danny was in a good mood when he walked into Mac's office that morning. He grabbed a cup of coffee and sat down at his desk to check his email, just as Mac came out of his office to refill his coffee. You know, no matter how much we drink this drink, maybe we should invest in coffee futures, Mac said jokingly. I'm all for it, Danny said with a laugh. You're in a good mood this morning, Mac said. Did you have a good weekend? Very good, thank you, Danny said. Did everything go well for Sylvia this weekend? Asked Mac. Yes, we did it, Danny said. Actually, very good. That's good to hear, Mac said. But don't let her fool you. I've seen this happen so many times, it's not even funny. What is this? Danny asked. Do you think Sylvia could do it? That's just how scammers work, Mac said. Of course, they can remain clean for some time, make amends to your spouses, promise to never do it again, or make your spouses think everything is fine. But that's not true. In my experience, cheating for these people is akin to drug addiction. Sure, they enjoy sex, but there's so much more involved. For them, it is a question of power, control, deal with the poor, unsuspecting spouse. Even if they become righteous for a while, they immediately return to it. The only thing that changes is that they become more secretive in this regard. Do you think Sylvia could do something like that? Danny asked. I've seen this before, Mac said. Your voice is even more exhausted than when you were on the police force, Denny told him. In the police force, we knew who the bad guys were. Drug dealers, pimps, rapists, robbers, you name it, Mac said. It's a completely different world out here. You do what you think is right for you, Danny. I'll have your back no matter what. Thanks, Mac. I appreciate it, Danny said. Later that morning, he received a call from John, his lawyer. Denny, how are things going? Asked John. I'm holding on, Danny said. What can I do for you? Do you think you can pop into the office for a bit after lunch? Asked John. I have prepared the documents and would like to review them with you. Yes, of course, Danny said. I'll be with you at 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Does it suit you? Great, John said. See you then. Danny was in John's office at 12:45 and was immediately let in. John stood up and shook his hand. Have a seat, he said. I prepared the divorce papers just like you said. Take a look and let me know what you think. Danny looked through the papers and saw that everything was exactly as he wanted. He signed where John indicated and handed them back. What about Murdoch? Danny asked. Have you come up with anything for them? That's what I did, John said, taking out another stack of papers. He handed them to Danny, who began to read them. Intentional infliction of emotional distress? Danny asked. John shrugged. I thought about it and decided to go this route, John said. In my opinion, this meets all 4 tests required by law. The company, in applying its stated policies, acted recklessly and willfully. Second, by allowing Jack to have sex with Sylvia and requiring him to do so, the company's actions were extreme and outrageous. Third, the behavior required by the company is the cause of your marriage's breakdown and misery. Fourth, you are experiencing severe emotional distress as a result of the adultery that led to your divorce. Do you think the judge or jury will believe it? Danny asked. Maybe, John said. And I see you're asking for $30 million, Denny said. I can't imagine a judge or jury would do that. Probably not, John said. I thought that $1 million for the year of your marriage was a good number, and I also doubt that the judge or jury will go for it. I chose this figure to get Murdoch's attention more than anything else. A lawsuit like this would definitely be noticed, and somehow I don't think they would want to see it on the news. See, this is bad for business. They will no doubt want to negotiate this, and I think they will do everything they can to settle it out of court. I believe that if we walk away with $2 million or more, we will win. And what is your interest? Danny asked. Usually I get a third. But in your case, since you work with Mac, I'll only ask for 10%, John said. Agreed. What the hell? Danny said. It's a deal. How do we play this out? You say your anniversary is on Wednesday, and you want to notify Sylvia that evening, so why don't we do it on the same day? Asked John. I'll get this done late Tuesday afternoon, and we can head to Murdoch's Wednesday morning. What do you think? Danny thought about it and agreed. That would give him time to take care of fucking Jack Wellstone. Let's do this, he said. I'll meet you in Murdoch, say, at 9:30 in the morning. I'm fine with that, John said. See you then. That evening, Danny grabbed the audio device from Sylvia's purse and downloaded the audio onto his computer while she was busy cleaning the kitchen. He put on his headphones and listened to what the device was recording. His heart sank as he listened to both of them. Now she wants to take his last name while in the office. Tears streamed down his cheeks as he realized Mac was right. He turned off the sound and wiped his face. Soon, he thought, this will all end. He took out his phone and sent a short message. The game is starting. That night, as he lay in bed, he moved away from Sylvia. She reached out to him, but he told her he wasn't feeling too well. He didn't lie. Tuesday, D-Day 1. Jack Wellstone sat at his desk and reflected on the current state of his life. He had a great job that paid a lot of money, and even better, a warm, helpful, and beautiful older woman in exchange for a sex toy. What's even better is that the company actually paid her to have sex with him. It couldn't be better, he thought with a grin. Sylvia had just left the office to pick up their lunch. He knew that after they shared their food, they would share each other's bodies. Soon, he thought, she will belong to him entirely, and her ignorant cuckold husband will not be able to do anything about it. It was a game he had played many times before, with other older women. But of all the women he seduced, Sylvia was the best. He came back to reality when his phone rang. He recognized the number and answered. Wellstone, he said, answering the call. Jack, this is Danny, said the man on the other end of the line. Yeah, Danny, good to hear from you, Jack said with a mischievous grin. What can I do for you? I'm planning a little surprise for Sylvia's anniversary, and I was wondering if you could help me, Danny said. Of course, said Jack. I will do everything in my power to help. Okay, Danny said. Look, meet me at Murphy's Bar at, say, 5:30 this evening so we can discuss this. And not a word from Sylvia. The best word is grave, Danny, Jack said. See you at 5:30. Great, Danny said. See you then, he added before ending the conversation. Jack put the phone back in his pocket and wondered what was on Danny's mind. After work, Jack headed straight to Murphy's and parked in the lot. The small bar was located at the end of a strip mall in the old part of town. He didn't feel too comfortable in this part of the city, but decided that it was still quite early. He walked into the dark pub and noticed Danny sitting at a table at the far end of the bar. Two strong-looking men sat at another table and looked at him warily as he walked over to where Danny was sitting. Danny had his laptop on his desk and was typing away when Jack walked up to him. He stopped typing and looked up as Jack pulled out a chair across from him. Just in time, Danny said. Fine. I admire punctuality. Can I get you something to drink? Yeah, a beer would be nice, Jack said. Danny waved to the man behind the counter and pointed to the two beers. The bartender grabbed 2 bottles of cold beer and placed them on the table. Danny handed the man some money and he walked away. So what is this surprise you're telling me about? Asked Jack. Danny smiled, but there was no warmth in his smile. As you probably already know, tomorrow is my 30th wedding anniversary, Danny said. Imagine, such a wonderful woman like Sylvia has been with me for 30 years. Who would have thought? I know what you mean, Jack said. Danny nodded his head in agreement. So tell me, Jack, what was it like to fuck my wife's ass? Danny asked. Jack looked shocked and started to say something, but Danny cut him off. Do not tell me. It was just a rhetorical question. I know what it's like. I did it last weekend. What? She didn't tell you? I thought you two had discussed everything. After all, she is your work wife, right? It's because of you that she takes off my rings when she comes to work in the morning, isn't it? Jack stared at his beer in confusion. Denny, Jack began, but Denny interrupted him. So, you want her to take your last name at the office, don't you? He asked. Are you planning to include it in your health insurance? You know, she's 49 years old enough to be your mother. Actually, you seem to like older married women, don't you? I don't know what you're talking about, Jack said. Don't play coy, Jack, Denny said. I know everything about you. Does the name Robin Harkness mean anything to you? How about Janice Taylor or Brenda Smith? There's more to it, but they all have the same story. Older married women who have a lot of money. And, strangely enough, you managed to write your name into their wills. How do you do it, Jack? Don't bother answering. I already know. So tell me, what's going on between you and older women? Is this some kind of Oedipus complex or something? Did you have feelings for your mother as a child and never grew out of them? What is the Oedipus complex? Asked Jack. What are you talking about? Oh, I forgot, Danny said. You are a product of modern education. Probably never even heard this term before. Jack was starting to worry. Who does this little man think he is anyway? Listen, Danny, I love your wife, he said. It's wrong to say that to an armed man whose wife you had sex with for what, 6 months or more? Said Danny. Fine. What do you want from me? Asked Jack. Danny turned his laptop so Jack could see the screen. What is this? Asked Jack. What? You don't recognize your company's mail site? Danny asked. I see it, Jack said. But what is that on the screen? This is your resignation letter, Danny said. Effective immediately. I've already included the email addresses of your bosses, your board of directors, and your HR department. All you have to do is enter your email signature and click Submit. Then, when you do that, you can leave. I have a better idea, Jack said, his face turning red. How about I kick your fucking ass and then fuck your wife in your bed while you watch? Danny grinned at this. This is true. You are 20 years younger than me. You're in pretty good shape, and you don't have any problems with your bad leg, but you're forgetting a couple of things, Denny said. Yes? Like what? Jack growled. First of all, I'm armed, Danny said. Secondly, I have been working in law enforcement longer than you have been alive. I grabbed a couple of things along the way, like how to make an asshole like you disappear without a trace, and no one will ever find your body. Jack looked at Danny in shock. Are you really going to kill me? Asked Jack. In New York in a while, asshole, Danny said. Your choice. We can do this in a simple way, he said, pointing to the laptop, or we can go somewhere less hospitable and do it the hard way. In any case, you disappear from my life forever. Personally, I kind of hope you choose the latter. It's been a long time since I've killed someone, and my trigger finger is a little itchy right now. And you're saying all I have to do is sign and send this email? Asked Jack. What then? Then you are leaving my city tonight, Jack said, and you will never return. Never. But I still have things in my apartment, he said. I already took care, Danny said, taking a key from his pocket. These two gentlemen took your things to a warehouse about an hour and a half outside of town. Here's the key to your shed. The month has already been paid. Jack looked around and saw two strong men sitting at the next table. They didn't look very friendly at all. Jack looked over the resignation letter that Denny had written. He had to admit, this guy had a way with words. After reading it, he signed it electronically and clicked Send. He turned the laptop back to Danny. A few seconds later, they heard Danny's phone ring. I put my email address in the BCC field, Danny said. Now get out of my city. These two gentlemen will escort you to the state line. Don't try to contact me, and don't even think about trying to contact my wife. Defeated, Jack nodded his head and stood up to leave. Danny stood up too and walked around the table to come face to face with Jack. God help you if our paths ever cross again, Jack, Danny told him. Okay, said Jack. You won. No hard feelings? He asked, holding out his hand. Danny looked at the hand for a moment and shook it. Trembling, he pulled Jack closer and kneed him in the groin with his good leg. Jack collapsed to the floor in pain. The bartender looked at them for a moment. He's okay! He just slipped on a wet spot! Danny shouted. The bartender nodded his head and went back to work. Danny grabbed Jack's hair and yanked, forcing the younger man to look up at him. I'm going to keep an eye on you, Jack, he said. If I ever find out you're having sex with another man's wife, so help me God, I'll hunt you down like a dog and put an end to your miserable fucking existence. Can you hear me, boy? Why, yes, sir, Jack said. Danny let go of him and stood up, looking at the two men standing next to him. Get this piece of crap out of my sight and out of my state, he told them. Now, boss, one of the men said. They grabbed Jack's arms and pulled him to his feet before leading him out of the bar. Danny watched them go, then noticed something on the floor near one of the chairs. He leaned over and saw that it was Jack's phone. Apparently, it fell out of his pocket when he hit the floor. He turned it on and saw that it was locked. Out of curiosity, he entered 1234 and clicked OK. Oddly enough, the phone opened right in front of him. He shook his head in amazement. Let's talk about nonsense, he thought. He turned off his phone and put it in his pocket before heading home. Wednesday, D-Day. Sylvia woke up early and noticed that Danny's side of the bed was empty. She hoped he was still downstairs and rushed downstairs, throwing on her robe. They had a long tradition of exchanging cards on the morning of their anniversary, and she hoped to catch him before he left. She walked over to the kitchen table and saw that the card she had bought for him was still there, unopened. She hoped to see a postcard from him, but there was none. Instead, there was a note. Had to leave early to do something. See you at Mangiacotti at 6 Wow. Happy anniversary, Jack. It was strange, she thought. He didn't say he loved her, and he always has a card for her to open in the morning. Concerned, she returned upstairs and got ready for work. When she got to the office, she walked into Jack's office and saw that he wasn't there. He was always there before her, she thought. She looked around, but his presence was nowhere to be seen. His jacket wasn't on the hanger, and the coffee pot was still off. She took out her phone and tried to call him, but it went straight to voicemail. Jack, honey, are you okay? Please call me. I worry. Love you, she said before ending the conversation. She turned around to see Robert Jones, the CEO, standing in the doorway with a piece of paper in his hand. Good morning, Sylvia, he said, entering the office. I hate to tell you this, but Jack is gone. No? She asked. What do you mean, no? He resigned from his post last night, Robert said. Sent this after he left the office. He handed her a piece of paper. She read this, and tears streamed down her face. For those to whom it may concern, the short letter began, I regret to inform you that I am submitting my resignation from Murdoch Holdings, effective immediately. Although I enjoy my job and the team I work with, I can no longer in good conscience continue to work here, knowing that I am ruining the marriage of a good man. I hope for the best for the company and will send my contact information as soon as I am settled in my new position. With best wishes, Jack Wellstone. The letter concluded. Sylvia read the letter twice before returning the paper to Robert. He refused to take it, raising one hand. Keep it for yourself, Sylvia, he said. We were all surprised by this. I also tried to call him, but I was unable to contact him. I don't understand. He never showed any signs that he was unhappy, she said. That's why we're surprised too, said Robert. We were very pleased with his work and he seemed happy here. You didn't tell your husband anything, did you? No, Mr. Jones, I didn't do it, she said. Okay, he said. Look, I know you two were very close. Why don't you take the rest of the week off? Your job is safe. Come back on Monday and we'll figure something out, okay? Thank you, Mr. Jones, she said, and tears streamed down her face. He gave her a fatherly hug before leaving the office. Sobbing, she left the building and drove away. Danny and John sat in the parking lot in John's car, watching the building. They saw a visibly upset Sylvia get into her car and drive away. John looked at Danny before speaking. "Are you ready?" he asked. "Let's go," Danny said. They got out of the car and entered the building, entering the elevator that would take them to the Murdoch Holdings executive suites. When they got there, the secretary tried to stop them from entering Robert's office, but Denny showed his badge, and the two continued on their way without slowing down. Robert looked up in surprise as two men entered his office without knocking. "Who are you, men?" he asked. "What do you think you're doing, bursting in here like that?" "Mr. Robert Jones?" Danny asked. "Yes, it's me," he said. Danny pulled out a manila folder and placed it on Robert's desk. "You've been notified," Danny said. "Have you been notified?" Robert asked in shock. "For what?" "It's all in the documents," John said. "Your company and your top managers are being sued for intentional infliction of emotional distress." "What?" asked Robert. "Are you crazy?" "For what?" "Your supervisor, Mr. Jack Wellstone, entered into a 6-month affair with my client's wife, effectively ending his marriage and causing him great emotional pain," John said. "Moreover, your company demanded that he participate in this illegal activity in order to remain employed in good standing. Therefore, my client is asking for $30 million in damages." "Now I know you're out of your mind," said Robert. "First of all, Jack Wellstone doesn't work here anymore. He resigned last night." He looked at Danny before continuing. "Wait a minute, I know you. You are Sylvia Brown's husband, aren't you? A police officer who resigned after being wounded. Are you his client?" "It is," Danny said. Robert looked at John and his face turned red. "Well, you can take this worthless lawsuit and shove it up your ass," he said. "Then you can stand by while my lawyers tear you to shreds over this slanderous piece of crap." "Mr. Jones, we have audio, video, and eyewitness testimony for all of our charges," John said. "And you know the old saying, discovery is a bitch. You know as well as I do what this lawsuit can do to your business. What do you think will happen when it becomes known that your company requires its executives to have illicit sex with their female assistants and has been doing so for 75 years or more? And what do you think will happen when it becomes known that not a single woman works here in leadership positions? In fact, I've spoken to several very qualified women who applied here for management positions and were told they weren't qualified for the job. Trust me, Mr. Jones, I will stand on the courthouse steps every single day and tell reporters how Murdoch discriminates against women and ruins the marriages of his employees. We also know that you pay your employees up to $100,000 a year to have sex with their appointed managers. To me, it sounds an awful lot like prostitution, and prostitution is illegal in this state. I'm sure the DA would spend all day with this, so if you want a counterclaim, that's up to you. It will only cost you a lot more. We are both reasonable people and are willing to accept a reasonable counteroffer. How about this?" he asked. Robert listened in stunned silence as John made it clear what he would do. He finally calmed down and looked at Danny. "How long were you married to Sylvia?" he asked. "Today would have been my 30th birthday," Danny said. "But instead of celebrating our anniversary, I will serve her with divorce papers tonight." Hearing this, Robert was even more deflated. He looked at John again. "Okay, you've made your point, lawyer," he said. "How about $3 million? Will this help end this?" John looked at Danny for a moment before either of them said anything. John looked back at Robert. "That's $3 million after taxes," John said. Robert sighed before speaking. "Okay," he said. "Anything else?" "A couple of points, Mr. Jones," Denny said. "What?" asked Robert. "First, you agree to stop this practice of yours," Denny said. "Secondly, you are hiring Sylvia for Wellstone's position. She has a business degree and worked with Wellstone for several months. She probably knows his work better than he does." Robert thought about it a little before speaking. "And you agree to sign a non-disclosure agreement if we do this?" he asked. Danny looked at John before speaking. "Of course," Danny said. "Okay, I need to confer with the board first." "When do you need an answer, lawyer?" he asked John. "Preferably by the end of work today," John said. "I think we can keep the media hounds at bay for so long." "Then you will have your answer," said Robert. "And Mr. Brown, I sincerely regret your marriage." "Thank you, Mr. Jones," Danny said. The three of them shook hands before John and Danny left. "Well, it went better than I expected," John said as they returned to his car. "Yes, it was," Danny said. "There's only one last thing I have to do." "Trust me, you'll be fine," John said. "Just give it time." Danny nodded his head. Sylvia parked her car and ran to the elevator that would take her to the floor where Jack's apartment was located. She took out her key and opened the door, hoping he was still there. However, when she went inside, it was empty. She ran from room to room shouting his name, but all she heard was the echo of her own voice. Realizing that Jack was indeed gone, she left the apartment and drove home, where she spent most of the day crying. Around 4 a.m., she went to the master bedroom to get ready for the evening with Danny. After crying her eyes out, she decided that she would spend the rest of her life making amends for her adultery. She promised herself that she would once again become the best wife Danny could ever dream of. She went into her wardrobe to choose a beautiful dress for the evening and noticed that something was wrong. Looking into the closet on the side where Danny's things were, she realized that most of his clothes were missing. Frightened, she opened his dresser drawers and saw that they were empty. She fell back onto the bed in fear. "This can't be," she thought to herself. She steeled herself long enough to take a shower and put on her makeup. "He's not really leaving me," she told herself. "This is all just a joke." "He would never leave me," she thought. While dressing, she trembled with fear. Finally, she looked at herself in the mirror one last time. Danny would never leave this, she thought to herself. She pulled into the Mangiacotti parking lot and saw Denny's old pickup truck there. "Okay," she thought. "He's here, and we can put an end to this nonsense once and for all." She went inside and was shown to a table that stood in a rather secluded corner. Danny was already there, dressed in a nice suit. He smiled and stood up as she approached. He sat her down as he always did, then sat down at the table across from her. They ordered food and a glass of wine. Over the meal, they exchanged small talk and pleasantries. When they finished eating, Sylvia raised her glass. 30 years of marriage," she said. Danny nodded his head and took a sip. Sylvia continued. "And to another 30 years of wedded bliss," she said, taking a sip. Danny shook his head and set his glass down. She looked at him in shock. "I'm sorry, but this won't happen," he said, sadly. "What?" she asked in shock. "Why not?" "You're not stupid, Sylvia," he said. "And me too. I have just 2 questions for you. Why and how long were you going to continue to take me for a fool?" "I honestly don't know why," she said. "Jack reminded me so much of you when we were younger, and he was so kind to me. I guess I just fell in love with him. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt you, and I certainly didn't plan on making you look like a fool." "Really?" he asked. "Damn it, you're old enough to be his mother. You invited him to our house, fed him our food, made me think he was a good guy. All this time you gave him what should have belonged only to me. To make matters worse, the company was paying you to be its sex object," he added. "Do you know what they call it in our state?" "How?" she asked quietly. "Prostitution," he said. "So who are you now?" "A prostitute." "Oh, God, no!" she exclaimed. "Bonuses and additional money were received for services provided." "Sexual services," he said, correcting her. "No matter how you spin it, that's what it was. The money for that new truck was money you earned as a prostitute. You want to know why I don't ride it anymore? Because it smacks of betrayal. Every time I think about that truck, all I see is you letting Jack fuck you." "Did you see that?" she asked. "Oh, yeah," Danny said. "I saw it all, Do you want to know what was worse than watching you two mating like animals? Watching you take off your rings and throw them in your desk drawer like a pile of trash? You were so ashamed of me that you couldn't even wear my rings at work? Then you lie and tell me you took them to clean them. I'm sorry, she said. I followed them, but they disappeared. I didn't know what to tell you, so I lied. I really regret this. This will never happen again, I swear. I know that won't happen, he said, putting his hand in his jacket pocket. He pulled out an envelope and placed it in front of her. Sylvia Brown, you have been notified. She shook her head and tears streamed down her face. No, I won't take them, she said. I don't want a divorce, Danny. Please tell me this is a joke. This is not a joke, Sylvia, he said. I've been agonizing over this all week and I'm not going to do it anymore. You still haven't answered my second question. How long were you going to keep making a fool of me? Were you going to continue having sex with Jack until you retired? I don't know, she said, sobbing. And this nonsense about him giving you his last name at work, he added. Were you really going to do that too? I don't know, she sobbed. Please stop, Danny. I can't stand it anymore. It's just too damn bad, he said. Now you have felt at least a little of what I have been experiencing for the last week and a half. However, there is one good thing that came out of all this. What is this? She asked. You've been promoted, he said. You were chosen to take Jack's place. Congratulations. You are the first female CEO of Murdoch Holding. Do you know about Jack leaving? She asked in shock. Yes, said Denny. I had a nice little conversation with him as a man. I convinced him that it was in his best interest to leave. And how did you manage to persuade Murdoch to give me his position? She asked. I had a little help from a good lawyer, Denny said. Danny, I know this may sound cliché, but it was just sex between me and Jack. It really didn't mean anything, she said. Of course we can handle this. Danny smiled and pulled out Jack's phone. He launched the voicemail application and played her last message sent to him. Jack, honey, are you okay? Please call me. I worry. I love you, they heard Sylvia's voice. Danny closed the app. Cute? Love you? He asked a rhetorical question. In my opinion, these sound like the words of a woman in love. No, Sylvia, we can't get past this. You made your bed, and now you can lie in it. Just so you know, you're not the first older woman Jack has done this to. I hope, however, that you will be the last. He reached into his pocket and pulled out another envelope. He threw it on the table. Come on, open it, he said. Sylvia opened the envelope and saw 3 rings inside, hers and his. She looked at him in shock. Did you take my rings? She asked. He nodded his head. Yes, he said. I thought if you don't want to wear them, maybe I should take them back. I was close to cutting them in half, but thought you might need the money you get from them. So, it's really over between us, isn't it? She asked. He nodded his head. Yes, he said. And just so you know, I already told Alicia and your parents. They're not too happy with you right now. Did you tell them? She asked. What did you tell them? The truth, he said. You cheated on me and I filed for divorce. Anyway, I think that's all for now. This house is yours. We each have our own pension and we share bank accounts. I already took my half. In case you haven't noticed, I already moved some of my things out of your house. I'll have to go back to get the rest. Just let me know when it's convenient for you. You can come anytime you want, Danny, she said. As far as I understand, this house is also yours. Okay, he said. Well, then I'll go. Happy anniversary. Goodbye, Sylvia. She reached out to grab him, but he was already at the counter, paying for their food. As he left the restaurant, she felt hot tears running down her face. The divorce went off without a hitch. Sylvia signed the papers and sent them back to John, who filed them in court. After 60 days, the divorce will become final. On Monday, she returned to work and heard the news of her promotion. This became huge news within the company and even made the local news. The company also quietly informed executives that they would no longer be required to have sex with their assistants. New managers will be assigned assistants, but sexual aspects of the job will no longer be sanctioned. Sylvia has taken the initiative to develop strict new standards regarding sexual harassment in the workplace. They both immersed themselves in their work and never met. Sylvia continued to wear her rings despite being divorced. In her mind, she was still married to Danny. Danny could never come to terms with what Sylvia had done and found it difficult to trust any woman. 6 months later, he walked Alicia down the aisle at her wedding and sat next to Sylvia. The two of them held hands as they watched their daughter get married. They even danced together at the reception. "You know I still love you, Danny Brown," she whispered in his ear as they danced, tears in her eyes. "And I still love you, Sylvia Brown," he replied. That night they made love in what used to be their shared home. A few months after this, Danny sat in his truck, watching a client's spouse destroy her marriage. Suddenly he felt a strange pain in his chest that radiated to his left arm. He realized what was happening and reached for his phone to call 911, but by the time the ambulance arrived, it was too late. He died of a heart attack. Sylvia was devastated and joined him in death a few months later. The official cause was listed as a stroke, but Alicia knew the real reason. Her mother's heart was broken. She was buried next to her ex-husband. Jake never really stopped pursuing older married women. About a year after Denny came face-to-face with him, his enraged husband caught him in bed with his latest catch. The husband shot off his reproductive organs with a 12-gauge shotgun. He died on the way to the hospital. The husband was found not guilty by reason of temporary insanity and divorced his cheating wife. Subscribe to our channel so that your second chaff doesn't cheat on you, and go ahead and listen to the next story, because this story is nothing compared to the next one. If you're under 18, don't even think about listening to the next one. Out 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 listening to